Piazza dei Miracoli. It's an interesting name.
Especially because, ironically, it feels like a miracle when people actually remember it exists.
Most simply go to the corner, take this selfie, and move on. I lived in Pisa for 8 years, and most of the time, tourists would simply ask where the tower was. Nothing more. Why is it called the Piazza dei Miracoli though? Did something happen here, maybe in the Middle Ages? Well, no, not quite.
Actually, this square has always been called Piazza del Duomo for centuries.
Until 1910, when one Italian novelist, Gabriele D'Annunzio,
Came here, was struck by the miraculous beauty of the square
and called it the Campo dei Miracoli. The name is poetic, certainly, but there are no miracles here, just legends and secrets.
Follow me. Let's discover why Pisa is much more than just a leaning tower.
The first monument to be built was the Cathedral. It was the year of the Lord 1063, and finally some good news reached the Council of Elders. The fleet that Pisa had sent to Palermo had won. It was high time to spend some of that money praising and thanking the Lord Almighty that had given them this victory.
This meant they needed a new cathedral, and the honor of building the symbol of Pisa's superpower was given to Busquetus. The project was so massive that Busquetus never saw it finished. The job passed to Reinaldo, who decided to do something even grander. He extended the church and built a new facade, where he also honored Busquetus with a grand tomb.
According to the legends, though, the new cathedral almost didn't see the light of day.
And the reason wasn't money or war.
It was because the devil didn't like it.
He knew such a beautiful building would guide too many souls to paradise. So he transformed into a dragon and embraced the cathedral from the front, digging his claws deep into the stone to crush it.
But an angel of the Lord saw, and an angel of the Lord intervened by smiting the devil until he was forced to flee, and in his haste he left here his nails. According to the legends, if one were to count those nails here, no one would count the same number twice. This spot could be considered a bad luck spot, but I know at least one guy who proposed here to his longtime girlfriend. She said yes, and they're still happily married together.
So, back to the story. While the devil didn't manage to destroy the cathedral, a fire almost did. It was the 25th of October, 1595. Workmen were up on the roof fixing the lead sheets when a brazier was left unattended. The roaring inferno that followed caused the ceiling to collapse on the nave. The heat was so intense that the marble columns cooked and turned brittle, and the doors, the pride of Bonamas, architect of the tower, simply melted. As the flames consumed the cathedral, the people of Pisa wept, believing they were losing not just the building, but their divine protector, the Madonna.
I know I said there were no miracles here, and certainly D'Annunzio didn't give the square its fancy name because he witnessed one. But I can't deny that what happened during that fire was extraordinary.
Because while the lead roof was raining down on their heads and everyone else was fleeing for their lives, a man, Curzio Ferrini, did the unthinkable. He ran in.
He braved the inferno, fought his way through the smoke, and managed to bring out the city's most precious treasure,
the Madonna di sotto gli organi.
So the city's patroness was saved, and the cathedral didn't turn to ash. But the damage ran deeper than just the bricks and the marble. You see, the cathedral wasn't just a symbol of Pisa's power. It was also a massive solar clock. Before we delve into this, though, I need to do a little detour into time management.
Today, at least in the Western world, we take January 1st for granted.
But in the Middle Ages, this was far from the accepted common sense. Actually, every city had a different idea.
Pisa chose March 25, the Annunciation, to start the year. And to make matters more complicated, their year was ahead of everyone else.
Does this sound like an headache? You don't know the half of it.
To keep track of this unique calendar, the Pisans turned the cathedral itself into a giant solar clock. Every year, exactly at solar noon on March 25, a ray of sunlight pierced through a specific window to strike near the high altar, officially marking the Pisan New Year. But the 1595 fire changed everything. During the repairs, the wall shifted just enough to block the original window, turning the cathedral back into a simple place of worship. Fast forward to the modern era, and the city wanted their custom calendar back. Since they couldn't fix the old alignment, the engineered a new one. Today, the sunlight enters a different window to strike a new target, a marble egg mounted high on a pillar. The city celebrates this Capodanno Pisano with medieval parades, gathering in the nave to watch the light strike, just as they did centuries ago.
But don't panic if you visit when it happens. You won't suddenly jump 1 year ahead. They're still stuck in the same year as the rest of Italy.
You might have to squint to spot the marble egg, but you definitely won't miss the next legend. After all, it's suspended right in the middle of the central nave. That is known as the Galileo lamp. The story goes like this. In 1583, a young university student named Galileo Galilei was sitting right here in the central nave of the cathedral. Maybe the preacher was boring. Maybe the incense was a little too thick. Whatever it was, legend has it that his attention drifted up to a swinging oil lamp overhead, and he noticed something strange. As the lamp moved in the drafts inside the church, Galileo realized that it didn't matter if it did a big swing or a small swing. The lamp always took the exact same amount of time to complete its path. But science is not science without proof, right? With no clock in sight, Galileo simply felt for his pulse. He counted his heartbeats against the swinging lamp and laid the exact groundwork for the modern pendulum clock.
Nice story, eh? There's just one tiny problem.
The massive bronze chandelier currently hanging in the center of the nave is definitely not the one Galileo saw. It was cast only in 1587. Moreover, our only source for this legend is Galileo's secretary, Viviani, who wrote his boss's biography 12 years after he died.
And we already know that Viviani was prone to, let's just say, some shameless brown-nosing. Does it mean then that the real one is lost to history? Not at all. It's just been moved.
To see the humble lamp that sparked a scientific revolution, we need to move over to the most ignored monument of the entire square, the Camposanto.
This is the Camposanto monumentale. Camposanto is an interesting word in Italian. In some regions now it is used interchangeably for cemetery. But in reality, this word didn't exist before 1277.
Camposanto literally translates to holy field. According to legend, the soil in it was brought back from Jerusalem during the Crusade, specifically from the Golgotha, the hill of the crucifixion.
The Pisan elite paid top flooring to secure a VIP plot in what was quite literally the Holy Land.
But humble Christian burials simply wouldn't do for the mega rich. To show off their wealth, they started buying up and recycling ancient Roman sarcophagi.
Because nothing says a pious Christian resting in the Holy Land quite like spending eternity in a pagan stone box carved with drunken satyrs and Roman gods. The Camposanto is actually the most neglected of the buildings. Its beauty, it's not visible from its exteriors, but once we cross the thresholds, you will see exactly what treasures are contained within.
That and, of course, the real lamp of Galileo. Let's go! You would think that the tool for a scientific revolution would be kept in a lab, right? Well, not this time. Instead, you'll find it in a quiet corner, almost invisible beside the monumental art. This is it, This modest little burner is the actual object that hung in the cathedral back in 1583. When the current chandelier was hung in 1587, it was quietly relocated here, still swinging, waiting for another Galileo to pass by.
I'm not saying don't go see the beautiful bronze chandelier in the cathedral. I'm saying don't forget to look in the corners, because the history there might surprise you.
For a square with a 900-year history, the Campo dei Miracoli has an incredibly clean track record. A couple of earthquakes, one big fire, and little else.
Except in 1944, when the Camposanto had its own devastating brush with disaster.
An artillery shell hit the roof, sparking a massive fire that literally rained boiling lead down onto the 14th century frescoes. We could easily be looking at completely bare brick all over the building today, and the fact that any of these frescoes survived isn't a miracle. It's the result of decades of painstaking restoration work to pull the surviving art away from the ruined walls and save it from total destruction. Yet, despite surviving all of that, the Camposanto remains one of the most ignored monuments in the square. And it's not the only masterpiece losing the battle for attention.
Today, all the tourists that come to Pisa actually flock to the Leaning Tower.
And they forget to look at the rest of the square.
There behind me is the Baptistry of the Campo dei Miracoli. This is actually the biggest baptistry in the world. It started constructions at the end of the 12th century by Salvi, and unfortunately it was the victim of Pisa's perennial problem, the lack of money.
In reality, the first blueprints speak of a completely different style of building, something more like this, the Chiesa of San Sepolcro de Lungarni.
I personally think it would have been quite the sight, but we'll never know.
The Salvi's work stalled out when the initial burst of funding dried up, leaving the project half-finished for decades. It took nearly a century for the star architect duo father and son, Nicola and Giovanni Pisano, to finally take over the site.
They brought the flashy new Gothic style with them, hijacking Salvi's outdated Romanesque base, creating this giant architectural mashup.
But empty coffers plagued the rest of the project as well.
Right in the middle of the new construction phase, Pisa lost the disastrous Battle of Meloria.
The Republic's fleet was decimated, the economy collapsed, and the city went broke. Much like the tower, the Baptistry suffered from decades of delays and half-finished compromises.
The building is beautiful on the outside, but you might notice that, at least on this side, it's distinctly lacking in tiles.
Local legends love to romanticize this missing half of the roof. You will hear that it was left bare to reflect the moonlight and act as a lighthouse, or the exact opposite, that they intentionally left the bright red tiles off that side so the sun's glare wouldn't blind incoming sailors. Or, if you prefer the weather excuse, that there was simply no point tiling the side battered by the harsh sea winds. But the reality is that,
once again, Pisa had run out of money halfway through, and so only half of the baptistry is tiled.
But the baptistry's main attraction isn't the mismatched roof or the splendid pulpit inside. It's a ritual performed by the custodians, a short concert proving the building doubles as a giant, perfectly tuned instrument.
Despite the fact that it happens every 30 minutes, it is entirely possible to miss it. Ask me how I know. So please check your watches and plan accordingly, because it's really worth your time.
But the baptistry's biggest mystery isn't hidden inside. It's carved right into the exterior. Just left of the main entrance sits a bizarre sequence of symbols.
Nobody knows what they mean.
And to make matters even more confusing, the same cryptic graffiti is carved across church entrances throughout Tuscany. There is no established consensus, but the academic community is split into three wildly different camps.
First, Magical church security.
Remember the devil's nails over on the cathedral? It seems medieval Pisa viewed Satan less as the prince of the darkness and more as a persistent municipal nuisance. The spell was essentially an alarm system to keep his claws off the marble.
Second, the world's most redundant acronym.
According to some historians, the letters are a medieval stonecutter's cipher, standing for Mysterium Hoc Arcanum. That translates to "this is an arcane mystery."
Meaning they carved a cryptic puzzle just to say it was a cryptic puzzle. Helpful. Third, a Greek SOS.
Epigraphists argue everyone is looking at the wrong language. They claim it's a coded invocation in Greek to the Archangel Michael for protection. The sequence is repeated 3 times to represent the Holy Trinity,
just to be sure that the message came across clearly. So, what's your take then?
Anti-demonic protection, the medieval equivalent of if you know you know,
Or a divine SOS? Even better. If you got a theory, let's hear it. At this point, your guess is as good as any historian's.
When Gabriele D'Annunzio named this the Campo dei Miracoli, he did it because he liked how the white marble looked against the grass. He was a poet after all.
But as we've seen, this truly is the field of no miracles.
Just a lot of human courage, ingenuity, and possibly some bad jokes. So take your selfie with the tower,
but then turn around, because the best stories in this square are the ones everyone is walking right past.